Oh, hello. Good afternoon. I'm done speaking, but my dad is not, so you're up, Dad. You're up.
I'm up. All right. Is it working? Number one, I'm the much younger brother, John, and I appreciate everyone coming. This has been I think, a beautiful event. Gene is where he wants to be. With mom and dad, our sister, who Nora and I really knew. Um, it's very hard to say goodbye. We all have, and I think it was a beautiful service, and I thank Father Carlos. Here's a guy that met Gene once, came out to fill in because the priest here is ice fishing in Lake of the Woods. And he came out, I think he did a wonderful job, and I thank you. Yes. And as you know, Gene might have been in the FBI. And I'm going to tell a story. When Gene passed away, Jan and I were in Minneapolis. Our kids called and said, Gene passed and he's at the house. And so I called Paul Huber, our friendly mortician, and said, Paul, Gene died, take care of him. He's got you, John. And that was it. It's all over. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Paul called, we can't find Gene. And Jan turned around and says, he's undercover. So he did his own thing. The county took him the wrong place, but Paul found him. But there's a gentleman here who is the new head in the past year of the local FBI office that would like to tell a few stories about what's going on. Right? Didn't know I was way ahead of you, did you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Michael Paul. I'm the current special agent in charge for the Minneapolis field office, which services Minnesota, but also North and South Dakota. And so I only had a few occasions to meet Gene at some of the alumni functions, but I was out there just this last summer with Gene at the range. And so I will say, not only was Gene still very spry, heard this morning about his investment and his commitment to the things that he did. He didn't just do the minimum at the FBI, he did almost 30 years there in that given office or division. So within the organization, that's a very, very important position, and so it's not surprising that we see that Gene found himself there after almost 30 years. So we heard a little bit this morning also about how Christ met and welcomed and spoke with Gene. So the FBI welcomed and knew Gene as Russell Gene Gray Jr. It's his official bureau name. And so Gene served in 7 field offices around the United States. He served in 2 of our legal attaché offices overseas. So the FBI has authority, of course, within the continental United States and all of our U.S. territories, but we have very close relationships with countries around the world. And while they're sovereign, they welcome us into their country to work with their law enforcement officials. And our positions there are called legal attachés. And so Gene served in 2 different locations. He was an assistant attaché in Mexico. And within Mexico, he was in Mexico City, also spent some time in Mazatlan. And then he also then became, as part of a promotion, the legal attaché in Manila, in the Philippines. So in addition to those locations, after Gene graduated the academy in 1955, he was sent to Charlotte, where here in Minnesota and the Dakotas, our headquarters city location is in Brooklyn Center here. In the metro area, but we have 15 different small offices across the 3 states that report back to our headquarters city office. And so in Gene's case, he did some time in Charlotte and then was sent out to Fayetteville to work in that smaller office, military town. From there, he went to our Washington field office. So Washington is the seat of government for the United States. It's the home of FBI headquarters, but there's routine work that goes on in Washington in those areas besides the headquarters work that the FBI does. And so we have a field office there just down the street that does the routine work and the investigations, and so Gene spent some time there. From there on to San Francisco and Monterey, then from San Francisco to San Diego, then out to Mexico, as I mentioned, where he was in both of the locations there in our Mexico attaché's office, and then promoted to be the legal attaché in Manila. From there back to headquarters, which brings up a good point. You know, service comes with sacrifice, and so certainly for Gene, when we look at his tour in the FBI, the time that he spent around the world and around the country, a lot of sacrifice there, a lot of moving around, and that sacrifice, you know, for the family as well, time that they didn't get or missed, and so we're thankful again for Gene's service there. Back to headquarters where he was in our inspection division. That's how we keep track of our own folks, not only disciplinary but performance, and just ensuring that all the offices are doing what they should be doing it in the way that we expect them to do it. And so likely in that assignment there, Gene was taking a look at that, having had some significant experience himself at that point, looking in on other offices to make sure they were doing what they needed to do. And then out to Chicago, where he was an assistant special agent in charge. So a leadership position, a very important leadership position within a field office. The assistant special agents in charge are running the day-to-day operations, overseeing investigations and the like for the folks there. And then he was named as the special agent in charge for our Richmond field office, which handles roughly half the state of Virginia. We have that Washington office I mentioned in the District of Columbia. They have oversight for a little bit of the northern part of Virginia, and we also have a small office down in Norfolk that handles a few counties in the far southeast part of the state. But the significant part of the state was in Richmond, and so Gene was overseeing the agents and the analysts and employees there working in Richmond. And then from there, I think capitalizing on some of his expertise, which I think might have been in the obituary, Gene did a fair bit of counterintelligence work, particularly during the Cold War. And so he was asked to move to be a special agent in charge in New York City, particularly to oversee counterintelligence there and work that they were doing regarding the Russians at the time. So that brings me to another sort of important point, that Gene's legacy within the organization is still alive today. He was part of the organization during very formative years when things were tumultuous, whether we're talking about the height of the Cold War or the Civil Rights Movement. Those were very important times for the FBI, certainly times when mistakes were made, but also time where we built our reputation within the United States for serving the country and protecting our citizens. And so when I think today about our people that are out doing that work, I think about how Gene laid the foundation for that and what he did. And so personally, I'm had some information that he received 15 commendations during his career. So I was doing the math a little bit, almost 30 years as an FBI agent, 15 commendations. So that's about every other year his work's being recognized by the organization for his performance and his accomplishments, so pretty significant as well. A little bit of just so interesting notes, a little bit about our history maybe and where we are. And I noted that when Gene began in 1955, his salary was $5,915. And so Gene progressed up through the highest ranks, again, in field office leadership and supervision. And when he retired in 1984, his salary was $63,800. Let me see if any other interesting notes here for you.
I think he gave most of it away.
Yeah, probably, right? Yeah. Probably. Well, of course, we know he was a Spanish speaker, right? He completed training within the FBI for the Spanish language as well. And maybe the last thing just to note here of interest is we heard this morning how much he loved the community, loved the state of Minnesota, and so while he went all those other places around the country and served outside the country, always on the record within the FBI and our administrative systems, Minneapolis was what we call his office of preference. And so we all sign into the FBI and we go where the FBI asks us to go, where they need us to be. But we all get to have an office of preference in the hope that at some point in your career, if it lines up right, that you can return home and actually serve in your home community. So obviously that career, and that's not uncommon, especially for those that go into supervision, those that become executives with the organization. We're serving where the organization needs us. But I thought it was interesting, again, in the notes there, it was still listed for him, his office of preference was to be back in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So a few highlights from his career. I do have for the family also a few photos here from his FBI records. And so I wish we could put them out there for everybody to see, but we'll just say a very svelte and debonair G-man for sure. Anyway, I'll make sure that John has those for the family. And so thanks for sharing a couple minutes with me and hearing a little bit about his career.
Thank you. It sounds like, oh, just 1 minute, Rod. Let me finish. Sit down there. Number one, I don't think anybody liked him. They kept moving him all the time. And he was overpaid at the end, so what else could you ask for? We do want anyone who wants this mic, a doctor wants to speak over here, but please feel free to stand up and grab it. There you go, Rod. Now you're up.
I won't use that. This is something tells and shows what he was like. My wife and I, Nancy, have a granddaughter, Anna, who has voiced through the last 4 or 5 years that she wanted to become an FBI agent. Now, I questioned that, but she persisted with that, and she told us that. And she's here now finishing up her education at the University of Minnesota. And we suggested maybe, because she wanted to go to the FBI, that she'd talk with Gene. So we called and made arrangements for that through John. I think it was John. And Gene spent about an hour and a half with this young lady talking about the FBI. And to me, that shows what kind of a person he really was, because he took attention to people other than he took attention to other people other than the general people around him. And we were very appreciative of him doing that for our granddaughter. Thank you.
Okay, on the FBI theme, I'm a former special agent in charge way before Paul got here. And I met Gene through our retired agent society. It's called the Society of Former Special Agents, the FBI. When Gene retired in '84, he joined the society. He served in national office. He went to every convention every year. And he served as my secretary for the chapter here in Minnesota. When I retired in 2006 and took over as the chair of the chapter, Gene was my secretary. So he served 37 years in the society.
I'm Jan Gray, and I married John Gray, who was obviously your brother. We in our family have a saying of Gene-isms, and they're humorous. Gene was a good neighbor. We lived next door to each other, and we've always gotten along. But Gene came and built his home next door to us and moved in, and one day he said to John, I'd like to, how did he put that? I'd like to use your car, John. I said, sure, what's up? And he said, well, I have to put some gas into the tanks that we use for mowing, you know. And John looked at him and said, oh, why don't you use your car? And he said, it leaves the smell in my car. And there's one more thing. John, what am I forgetting? Where are you, John? There you are. What am I forgetting for the other Gene? Oh, he built his new home, and he had a laundry room. It was a pleasant home. And he had a laundry room, and he asked for something else one time. John said, well, of course. What are you doing? Well, I'm getting a chair for the laundry room. And we said, why are you getting a chair for the laundry room? And he says, well, because I just sit down here and wait between cycles. And yeah, it is true. So those are some of the Gene-isms. And then one more. We were going up north or someplace on the freeway. What was that? And yeah, we took his car. Go ahead.
He borrowed our car to do something else because he had taken, and he said, well, I got to borrow your car, you know, I got a tour. Sure. So we took his. Of course, it broke down. Radiator broke up in Monticello or someplace, and we borrowed.
And oh my gosh, this is terrible. So about 2 days later, we went to the march, and there's John riding the exercise bike. So we went up and talked to him. And
Judy, my dear friend Judy.
More on the FBI thing. It was maybe 7, 8 years ago. I was talking about my grandfather was in the FBI, Helgi Thompson, and he'd lost his service, his commemorative FBI pistol. And I was telling Jim about it, and Jim's like, did you know my Uncle Gene was in the FBI too? And Jim asked Gene, he goes, they were good friends. I did find the gun. It's in my possession now.
I'm Bill Volna, and I date back to the age of Russ Gray. And we were like, he was like my father for about 20 years. And so I don't have much of a connection with Gene here, but I do want to say that when the ice was receding, and we had so many wonderful. Russ was busy at the Graco company, and I had a little machine shop a couple of miles away. And one day a friend said he wanted to bring Russell over to see my little shop, but if he did, then I could never get rid of him. So for the next 20 years or whatever, Russ would leave board meetings at the Northwestern Bank building. When the guys would go up the street to the bank or up to the Minnesota Club for lunch, Russ would drive that big red LeBroem Cadillac over to my little shop, and we'd have lunch together. Oh God. So again, I date back to an earlier era, but the whole relationship melded into why I'm here today, because we have historically stuck together all these years since Russ's passing. And man, he was not